The crimson sky above New Meridia burned with the trails of 1,000 alien interceptors, their sleek hulls catching the dying light of the colony's emergency beacons. Kestrel Vance pressed her face against the reinforced viewing port of the underground command bunker, watching humanity's newest home crumble under the relentless assault of the hegemony fleet. The Kythera had come without warning, their demands simple: surrender or face extinction. "They're targeting the agricultural domes now," reported Zara Okafor from her position at the tactical display, her fingers dancing across holographic interfaces with practiced precision. The former Earth Navy pilot had seen 3 worlds fall to the hegemony, each time barely escaping with refugee ships full of survivors. This time, there was nowhere left to run. Thane Mercado stood at the center of the chaos, his weathered hands gripping the edge of the command table as reports flooded in from across the colony. As the elected leader of New Meridia's Defense Council, he had spent the last 18 months preparing for this moment, knowing it would come eventually. The hegemony's expansion had been methodical, systematic, and utterly ruthless. Humanity had lost 47 colonies in the past decade, each one falling like dominoes in an inexorable march toward Earth itself. "Sir, we've lost contact with Sectors 7 through 12, called out Dex Ravenhill, the youngest member of their engineering corps. At 19, he possessed an intuitive understanding of quantum mechanics that had earned him a place among the colony's most critical personnel." His voice cracked slightly as he delivered the grim news, his youth making the weight of their situation seem even more crushing. Kestrel turned from the viewport, her engineer's mind already calculating impossible odds. She had spent 15 years designing planetary defense systems, always working under the assumption that they would have warning, time to prepare, support from the colonial fleet. None of those assumptions had proven true. The hegemony had emerged from subspace directly above their world, bypassing every early warning system humanity had devised. "What's our ammunition status?" Thane asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. 67% of our defense platforms are offline," Zara replied, her voice steady despite the circumstances. "Remaining platforms have maybe 4 hours of sustained fire before we're down to emergency reserves." The bunker shook as another wave of Kythera bombers swept overhead, their exotic energy weapons carving molten furrows across the colony's surface. Through the thick walls, they could hear the distant screams of metal and concrete being torn apart by forces that humanity barely understood, let alone knew how to counter. Kestrel's mind raced as she studied the tactical display, noting the patterns in the hegemony's attack formation. The Kythera were methodical, efficient, but there was something almost ritualistic about their approach. They weren't simply trying to destroy the colony, they were making a statement, demonstrating their overwhelming technological superiority to any human survivors who might witness the battle. "There," she said suddenly, pointing to a cluster of smaller vessels hanging back from the main assault. "Those look like command ships. If we could—" "Kestrel, we can barely keep our own fighters in the air," Thane interrupted gently. "Whatever you're thinking, we don't have the resources." But Kestrel's eyes had locked onto something else entirely. One of the Kythera vessels, a sleek destroyer-class ship, had taken damage from a lucky hit by their orbital defense platforms. She could see it listing slightly, its energy signatures flickering on the display. The ship was wounded, separated from its formation by nearly 1,000 kilometers as it attempted emergency repairs. "What if we don't need resources?" she said quietly, her voice cutting through the background noise of alarms and status reports. "What if we just need desperation and a very good pilot?" Zara looked up from her station, following Kestrel's gaze to the tactical display. Understanding dawned in her eyes, followed immediately by a mixture of excitement and terror. The plan forming between them was insane, unprecedented, and possibly humanity's only chance at striking back against an enemy that had seemed invincible. Dex noticed the exchange and moved closer, his young face eager despite the dire circumstances. "What are you two thinking?" he asked. Kestrel smiled for the first time in days, though it was a grim expression. "We're thinking it's time to steal ourselves an alien warship." The maintenance tunnels beneath New Meridia spaceport had never been designed for this kind of operation. Kestrel led the small team through the cramped passages, their emergency lighting casting eerie shadows on the curved walls as Kythera bombardment continued overhead. Every few minutes, the entire tunnel system would shudder as another section of the colony succumbed to the alien assault. The Windchaser is still operational, Zara reported through her comm unit, her voice barely audible over the interference caused by the hegemony's jamming fields. But I can't guarantee how long the launch bay doors will remain functional. Thane had argued against the mission for 20 minutes before finally giving his reluctant approval. The plan was beyond desperate, it was suicidal. They would take the colony's fastest courier ship, approach the damaged Kythera destroyer under cover of the debris field, and attempt to board the alien vessel before its crew could complete repairs and rejoin the battle. Remind me again how we're supposed to get past their point defense systems? Dex asked as they reached the access ladder leading to the spaceport's lower levels. His hands shook slightly as he adjusted the bulky interface unit strapped to his back, a hastily assembled device that represented their only hope of interfacing with alien technology. We don't, Kestrel replied bluntly. We're going to rely on the fact that they've never encountered humans desperate enough to try something this stupid. The Windchaser was a sleek courier vessel, built for speed rather than combat. Its cargo bay had been hastily modified to accommodate the additional equipment they would need for the boarding operation, including cutting torches, portable life support units, and the experimental translation matrix that Dex had cobbled together from salvaged components. As they performed their pre-flight checks, reports continued to stream in from the surface. The hegemony forces had established complete orbital superiority, and their ground troops had begun landing in the colony's agricultural sectors. Humanity's window of opportunity was closing rapidly. Launch bay doors are cycling, Zara announced from the pilot's seat, her hands moving across the control interfaces with practiced efficiency. I'm reading massive electromagnetic interference from the Kythera fleet. Our navigation systems are going to be flying mostly blind once we clear the atmosphere. Kestrel strapped herself into the co-pilot's seat, reviewing the scanner data one final time. The damaged alien destroyer was still maintaining its position at the edge of the battle zone, its energy signatures indicating significant systems failures. If their intelligence was correct, the ship's crew would be focused entirely on emergency repairs, leaving their defensive systems operating on automatic protocols. Target vessel is designated as Hunter-class destroyer, she read from her tactical display. Estimated crew complement of 40 to 60 individuals, armed with plasma cannons and quantum torpedo launchers. Length approximately 400 meters, mass roughly equivalent to one of our heavy cruisers. Dex leaned forward from his position at the engineering station. The interface unit should be able to tap into their computer systems once we establish a physical connection. Problem is, we have no idea how their security protocols work. I might be able to crack their basic functions, but their weapon systems and navigation will probably be locked down tight. The Windchaser lifted off smoothly, rising through the launch bay's opening into the chaos of the orbital battle. Immediately, Zara began evasive maneuvers as Kythera interceptors swept past their position, apparently dismissing the small courier ship as a fleeing refugee vessel rather than a threat worth pursuing. There she is, Kestrel whispered as their target came into view on the main display. The alien destroyer was a thing of terrible beauty, its hull gleaming with an opalescent sheen that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. Scorch marks along its port side told the story of its encounter with the colony's defenses, and Kestrel could see atmosphere venting from several hull breaches. I'm reading massive power fluctuations in their main drive system, Dex reported, his instruments detecting the exotic energy signatures emanating from the alien vessel. Whatever kind of propulsion they use, it's definitely not fusion-based. The quantum resonance patterns are unlike anything in our databases. Zara adjusted their approach vector, using the debris field from destroyed orbital platforms as cover. The closer they got to the alien ship, the more apparent it became just how advanced Kythera technology truly was. Even damaged and crippled, the destroyer radiated an aura of technological sophistication that made human engineering seem primitive by comparison. Docking umbilical ready, Kestrel reported as they closed the final distance. I'm detecting minimal activity from their point defense grid. Either their systems are down, or they really don't consider us a threat. Let's hope it stays that way, Zara muttered, engaging the magnetic grapples that would secure their ship to the alien hull. Because once we're attached, there's no going back. The Windchaser shuddered as the grapples locked into place, and suddenly they were moving in formation with the massive Kythera destroyer. Through the viewports, they could see the alien hull stretching away in all directions, its surface covered with incomprehensible geometric patterns and what appeared to be self-repairing nanomaterials working to seal the battle damage. Cutting torch is ready, Kestrel announced, moving toward the airlock. Once we're inside, we'll have maybe an hour before their repair systems restore full functionality. After that, even if we can't figure out their controls, at least we'll deny them the use of this ship. But as she sealed her helmet and prepared to step into the unknown, Kestrel found herself hoping for something more than simple sabotage. Somewhere in the alien technologies that lay beyond that hull, there might be the key to saving not just New Meridia, but every human world threatened by the hegemony's inexorable advance. The interior of the Kythera destroyer defied every assumption about starship design that Kestrel had accumulated over her career. The corridors curved in impossible directions, their walls seeming to pulse with a faint bioluminescence that provided the only illumination. There were no right angles, no straight lines, everything flowed with an organic elegance that suggested the ship had been grown rather than built. Atmosphere is breathable, Dex reported through his helmet comm, studying the readings on his portable scanner. Oxygen-nitrogen mix, though there's something else here I can't identify. Temperature is holding steady at 18 degrees Celsius. They had breached the hull through what appeared to be a maintenance section, though the alien equivalent bore no resemblance to human engineering spaces. Instead of pipes and conduits, they found themselves surrounded by what looked like crystalline trees, their branches extending through the ship's structure in patterns that somehow managed to convey both information and energy. No sign of the crew yet, Zara whispered, her sidearm drawn despite the knowledge that human weapons would likely prove ineffective against Kythera technology. Either they're all busy with repairs, or they don't consider interior security a priority. Kestrel studied the nearest crystal formation, watching as pulses of light traveled along its length in complex patterns. I think we're looking at their equivalent of computer networks, she said, tracing the flow of information with her finger. But it's not digital, it's something else entirely. Dex unpacked his interface unit, a bulky device that represented the culmination of 2 decades of research into alien technologies. The translation matrix should be able to establish some kind of connection, he said, though his voice carried a note of uncertainty. Problem is, our entire understanding of their systems is based on salvaged fragments and theoretical models. As they moved deeper into the ship, the organic nature of the vessel became even more apparent. The corridors seemed to respond to their presence, walls shifting slightly to accommodate their movement while maintaining structural integrity. It was beautiful and deeply unsettling at the same time. There, Kestrel pointed ahead to what appeared to be a central hub, where dozens of crystal formations converged in a complex nexus. If this ship has anything equivalent to a bridge or command center, that's probably it. The central chamber was vast, its ceiling lost in shadows that seemed to move independently of any light source. At the room's heart stood a structure that could only be described as a throne, though it was clearly designed for a being very different from humans. Surrounding it were arrays of crystal interfaces, their surfaces covered with symbols that shifted and changed like living text. I'm reading massive data flows through this area, Dex reported, setting up his equipment near the central console. Whatever this room is, it's definitely the nerve center of the ship. As he worked to establish a connection between his interface unit and the alien systems, Kestrel explored the chamber's perimeter. She found what appeared to be viewing ports, though instead of transparent materials, they seemed to be composed of some kind of programmable matter that could display real-time images of space around the ship. Got something, Dex announced suddenly. The translation matrix is finding patterns in their data structure. It's not language as we understand it, it's more like music? Mathematical poetry? I'm getting fragments of meaning, but nothing coherent yet. Zara had taken position near the chamber's entrance, keeping watch for any sign of the Kithra crew. "How long do you need?" she asked. "I don't know," Dex replied honestly. "This is unlike anything I've ever encountered. Their information systems seem to be based on harmonic resonance rather than binary logic. Every piece of data exists in relationship to every other piece, creating this incredibly complex symphony of meaning." Kestrel moved to join him at the central console, watching as streams of alien text flowed across his display. Gradually, patterns began to emerge, recurring symbols that seemed to represent concepts rather than specific words. "There," she said, pointing to a sequence that appeared repeatedly in the data stream. "That combination keeps showing up. What do you think it means?" Dex adjusted his parameters, cross-referencing the symbol sequence with the ship's operational data. "Based on the context, I think it might mean something like forced servitude or coercion. It's associated with references to other star systems, other worlds. A catalogue of conquered territories," Kestrel breathed. "They're keeping records of their conquests." As the translation matrix continued its work, a more complete picture began to emerge. The Kithra were not simply conquerors, they were collectors, gathering species from across the galaxy for purposes that remained unclear. The data spoke of vast facilities where captured populations were held, of experiments conducted on an unimaginable scale. "Kestrel, you need to see this," Dex said, his voice tight with emotion. "I've found references to something called the archive. It's some kind of central repository where they're storing. I think they're storing entire civilizations." Before she could respond, an alarm began sounding throughout the ship, not the harsh klaxon of human vessels, but a hauntingly beautiful melody that nonetheless conveyed urgent danger. The crystal formations around them blazed with increased activity, and the organic walls began to shift more rapidly. "They know we're here," Zara announced from her position. "I can hear movement in the corridors. We've got maybe minutes before they reach this chamber." Kestrel made a decision that would haunt her for the rest of her life. "Download everything you can," she told Dex. "All the navigation data, all the technical specifications, everything about this archive. We need to understand what we're fighting." "But the ship," he started to protest. "The ship was never the real prize," she interrupted. "The knowledge is what matters. The knowledge is how we save everyone." As Dex worked frantically to extract the alien data, Kestrel found herself staring at the viewing port, watching New Meridia burn in the distance. Somewhere in the vast data stores of this single vessel lay the information that could turn the tide of humanity's war against the hegemony. The question was whether they would live long enough to use it. The first Kithra warrior to enter the central chamber moved with fluid grace that made Zara's trained reflexes seem clumsy by comparison. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, its form was humanoid but elongated, covered in the same opalescent material as the ship's hull. Where its face should have been, a cluster of crystalline formations pulsed with soft light, apparently serving as both sensory organs and communication interface. "Download at 60%, Dex whispered urgently, his hands flying over the interface controls as the alien data structure revealed layer after layer of hidden information. "I'm finding technical specifications, star charts, even what looks like psychological profiles of conquered species." The Kithra warrior paused at the chamber's entrance, its crystalline sensors scanning the 3 humans with what seemed like curious detachment rather than hostility. When it finally spoke, its voice emerged from the ship's organic walls themselves, translated by systems too advanced for human comprehension. "Small life form seeking knowledge," the voice said, each word accompanied by harmonious overtones that conveyed emotional context beyond the literal meaning. "Purpose unclear. Danger to harmony minimal." Kestrel stepped forward, her mind racing to process this unexpected development. "We're trying to understand," she said, hoping the ship's translation systems could convey her meaning. "Your people are destroying our worlds. We want to know why." The warrior's sensor cluster brightened, and for a moment the chamber filled with a symphony of sounds that somehow managed to communicate complex concepts without words. When the translation finally came, it carried notes of sadness that seemed genuinely alien yet unmistakably real. Understanding pain, the warrior said. Small life forms experience forced harmony as destruction. Perspective limited by brief existence cycles. 80%, Dex reported, though his attention was divided between his equipment and the extraordinary conversation taking place. I'm finding references to something called the Eternal Choir. I think it's some kind of collective consciousness. The Kithara warrior moved closer, its movements causing the crystal formations around the chamber to resonate with increased intensity. Small life form accesses deep harmony patterns. Dangerous knowledge for limited perspective beings. Kestrel felt a chill that had nothing to do with the ship's atmosphere. What kind of knowledge? She asked. Instead of answering directly, the warrior gestured toward the central console, where Dex's interface had begun displaying increasingly complex data structures. The alien information wasn't just technical specifications, it was a complete philosophical framework for understanding existence itself. The archive, the warrior said, its communication taking on urgency for the first time. Place where consciousness transcends individual limitations. All species invited to join eternal harmony. Resistance creates discord. They're not conquering us, Kestrel realized with growing horror. They're trying to save us. From ourselves. Dex's equipment suddenly blazed with activity as it encountered a new layer of data, something that had been hidden beneath layers of harmonic encryption. Kestrel, I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout this sector of space. There's something out there, something that makes the hegemony fleet look like toys. The warrior's sensor cluster dimmed noticeably. Silence bringers approach. Devourers of harmony. Purpose of archive preservation against ultimate ending. Through the chamber's viewing ports, they could see space itself beginning to darken as something vast and incomprehensible moved between the stars. It wasn't a ship or fleet, it was something that existed on a scale that defied human perception, a presence that seemed to absorb light, energy, even the basic patterns of matter and energy that made existence possible. Download complete, Dex announced, though his voice carried no triumph. But I don't think any of us understand what we've just found. The Kithara warrior turned to face the viewing port, its crystalline form resonating with frequencies that spoke of ancient fear and desperate purpose. Choice moment arrives for small life forms. Join harmony song or face silence alone. Zara had remained silent throughout the exchange, but now she stepped forward, her pilot's instincts recognizing the tactical situation developing around them. That thing out there, it's what you're running from, isn't it? The real enemy. Not running, the warrior corrected. Gathering voices for final song. Each species adds unique harmony to eternal chorus. Without diversity, song becomes silence. Kestrel stared at the data flowing across Dex's displays, seeing star charts that showed the inexorable advance of something that had already consumed entire galactic sectors. The Kithara weren't conquerors, they were refugees, trying to preserve some essence of each species before the ultimate darkness arrived. How long do we have? She asked. The warrior's response came accompanied by harmonics that conveyed cosmic timescales compressed into human comprehension. Silence advances rapidly. Perhaps 1,000 of your cycles before this region consumed. Archive must be complete before final darkness. But the people you've taken, Dex said, his young face struggling to process the magnitude of what they were learning. Are they still, themselves? Consciousness preserved. Enhanced. Connected to eternal harmony while maintaining individual voice. Death becomes impossible. Suffering diminished. Growth eternal. The implications were staggering. Humanity faced a choice between voluntary transcendence and eventual extinction, mediated by beings whose very existence challenged every assumption about consciousness, individuality, and the nature of existence itself. We need to return to New Meridia, Kestrel said finally. Our people deserve to make this choice for themselves. The warrior's sensor cluster pulsed with what might have been approval. Wisdom in informed choice. Ship systems will allow departure. Data gift will enable understanding. As they prepared to leave the chamber, Dex made one final discovery in the alien data structure. "There's something else here," he said, his voice barely audible. "Instructions. Not just for understanding their technology, but for improving it. For making it work better than they ever imagined." The warrior paused at the chamber's exit. Small life forms possess unique perspective. Harmony enhanced by discord. Perhaps final song more beautiful than anticipated. Back aboard the Windchaser, racing through the chaos of the orbital battle toward New Meridia's surface, the weight of their discovery settled over the three humans like a suffocating blanket. The data they had stolen, or been given, contained not just the technical specifications of Kythera technology, but a complete reimagining of humanity's place in a universe far stranger and more dangerous than anyone had imagined. "The translation matrix is still processing the technical data," Dex reported, his fingers dancing across multiple displays as streams of alien information flowed past. "But I'm already seeing patterns that don't match their ship designs. It's like their technology was deliberately limited, held back from its full potential." Kestrel studied the engineering specifications scrolling across her screen, her mind automatically identifying inefficiencies in the Kythera systems that seemed almost purposeful. "They're collectivists," she realized. "Their technology reflects their philosophy, everything designed to work in harmony, nothing pushed to its absolute limits because that would create discord in their systems." "But humans don't think that way," Zara said, executing a sharp evasive maneuver as Kythera interceptors swept past their position. "We're problem solvers. Tinkerers. We take things apart and rebuild them better." The implications were staggering. The Kythera had shared their technology with dozens of species over the millennia, but none had possessed humanity's particular combination of creativity, stubbornness, and willingness to break things just to see how they worked. Where other species had simply adopted Kythera designs wholesale, humans might be able to improve them beyond their creator's wildest imagination. "I need to reach Thane immediately," Kestrel said as they entered New Meridia's atmosphere. "This changes everything about our resistance strategy." The spaceport was a scene of organized chaos when they landed. Evacuation ships were loading refugees while defense forces prepared for what everyone assumed would be a final, hopeless stand against the Kythera ground troops. The sight of the Windchaser's return caused a stir among the personnel, who had written off the boarding mission as an elaborate suicide attempt. "You're alive," Thane said with genuine surprise as they entered the command bunker. "Please tell me you have something useful, because the situation topside is deteriorating rapidly." Kestrel activated the chamber's main display, uploading the alien data they had acquired. "We have everything useful," she said simply. "Star charts, technical specifications, philosophical frameworks, and most importantly, the real reason the Kythera are here." The next hour was spent in frantic explanation as Kestrel outlined what they had learned aboard the alien destroyer. The revelation that the Kythera saw themselves as saviors rather than conquerors fundamentally altered the nature of the conflict, but it was the technical data that offered immediate tactical opportunities. "Look at this," Dex said, highlighting a section of the alien ship schematics. "Their plasma cannon design is beautiful, elegant, efficient, incredibly powerful. But it's also conservative. They've built in safeguards that limit the maximum energy output to prevent system instabilities." "What if we removed those safeguards?" asked Vex Thorson, the colony's military commander who had been coordinating the ground defense. "We'd probably blow up the first time we tried to fire it," Dex admitted. "But if we could solve the instability problem, we could potentially triple the weapon's output." Kestrel was already deep in the technical specifications, her engineering background allowing her to see possibilities that others might miss. "It's not just the weapons," she said. "Their whole approach to technology is based on harmony and stability. They sacrifice performance for reliability. But what if we approached it differently?" "You're talking about rebuilding their technology from the ground up," Thane said, though his voice carried intrigue rather than skepticism. "That would take years of development, assuming we could even understand their basic principles." Not rebuild, Kestrel corrected. Enhance. The fundamental designs are sound, better than sound, they're revolutionary. But they're implemented with a philosophical framework that prioritizes collective harmony over individual achievement. We can change that framework. Zara leaned forward, studying the star charts that showed the positions of Kythera fleet elements throughout the system. Even if we could modify their technology, we'd need actual ships to mount it on. Our entire defense fleet couldn't match a single Kythera destroyer. So we get more ships, Dex said with the confidence of youth. I've been analyzing their communication protocols. Their ships are designed to respond to certain command frequencies, specific harmonic signatures. If we could replicate those signals. The plan that emerged over the next several hours was audacious beyond anything humanity had attempted in its brief spacefaring history. They would use the captured technical data to enhance Kythera technology beyond its original parameters, then employ that enhanced technology to capture more alien vessels in a cascading campaign of technological appropriation. It's insane, Vex said when the planning session concluded. We're talking about turning the enemy's own technological superiority against them. It's more than that, Kestrel replied, staring at the data streams that continued to reveal new possibilities. We're talking about becoming something neither human nor Kythera. Something new. As teams of engineers and technicians began the seemingly impossible task of reverse engineering alien technology under combat conditions, none of them fully appreciated that they were taking the first steps toward transforming humanity into something the galaxy had never seen before, a species that could take the greatest achievements of others and make them not just equal, but superior. 3 months after the capture of the Kythera destroyer, New Meridia's industrial complexes hummed with activity that would have seemed impossible during the dark days of the initial siege. The colony's workshops had been transformed into hybrid manufacturing facilities where human ingenuity merged with alien technology to create something entirely unprecedented in galactic history. Weapons test successful, Zara reported from the bridge of the modified destroyer, now designated as the Harmony's End. Enhanced plasma cannons are operating at 240% of original specifications with no system instabilities. The breakthrough had come when Dex realized that the Kythera safety protocols weren't actually necessary, they were philosophical choices embedded in the technology itself. By replacing the alien harmonic regulators with human-designed quantum stabilizers, they had unlocked performance levels that the original creators had never intended. Fleet status report, Kestrel requested from her position at the tactical console. Through the viewports, she could see the growing collection of captured and modified vessels that now comprised humanity's first true war fleet. 12 Kythera ships of various classes, each one enhanced with human modifications that pushed their capabilities far beyond original parameters. The Defiant Song is reporting full operational status, Vex announced from his command station. Enhanced shielding is holding steady, and the modified engines are providing 30% greater acceleration than baseline Kythera specifications. Each captured vessel told a story of human adaptation and innovation. The Void Walker had been fitted with experimental phase shift generators that allowed it to briefly exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. The Star Breaker mounted weapons that could destabilize matter at the quantum level. The Night's End possessed stealth capabilities that made it effectively invisible to Kythera sensor arrays. Incoming transmission from the surface, Dex reported, his voice carrying new confidence after months of working miracles with alien technology. Thane says the last refugee ships have departed. New Meridia is officially evacuated. The decision to abandon the colony had been painful but necessary. The enhanced fleet needed operational freedom, and the population needed protection from the inevitable Kythera response to humanity's technological theft. More than that, they needed to test their innovations on a larger scale before the real war began. Set course for the hegemony staging area in the Kepler system, Kestrel ordered. It's time to announce humanity's presence in this conflict. The journey through subspace revealed another area where human innovation had improved upon Kythera technology. Where the aliens' philosophy emphasized stable, predictable travel through established shipping lanes, human modifications allowed for rapid course changes and unpredictable emergence points that made their fleet almost impossible to track or intercept. Emergence in 30 seconds, Zara announced as they approached their target. I'm reading significant hegemony presence, at least 40 vessels in various configurations. The Kepler system had been one of humanity's earlier colonies, an agricultural world that had fallen to the Kythera 6 months earlier. Intelligence reports suggested it was being used as a staging area for the next phase of hegemony expansion, with massive logistics operations preparing for assaults on the inner worlds. All ships, engage cloaking protocols, Kestrel ordered. Attack pattern Delta 7. Remember, we're not just trying to win this battle, we're trying to send a message. The enhanced fleet dispersed throughout the system, each vessel using its unique modifications to approach the hegemony forces from unexpected angles. The Star Breaker would target their heavy command ships, using quantum destabilizers to cripple them rather than destroy them outright. The Void Walker would phase between dimensions to attack from directions that conventional shields couldn't protect against. The Night's End would coordinate the assault while remaining completely invisible to Kythera sensors. Targets acquired, Vex reported from the Defiant Song. Beginning attack run on the primary logistics platforms. The battle that followed would be studied by military historians for generations. For the first time in the conflict, Kythera forces found themselves outmatched not by superior numbers or different tactics, but by their own technology enhanced beyond their ability to counter. Human innovations had created weapon systems that the hegemony had no defense against, shield configurations they couldn't penetrate, and stealth capabilities they couldn't detect. Multiple hegemony vessels requesting surrender terms, Dex reported with barely contained excitement. They're offering to withdraw from the system in exchange for safe passage. But Kestrel had learned too much about the true nature of the galactic situation to accept simple victory. The data from the original destroyer had revealed the approaching cosmic threat that gave context to the Kythera's desperate expansion. Humanity needed allies, not defeated enemies. Open a channel to the hegemony commander, she ordered. It's time for another conversation. The alien response came in the form of complex harmonic patterns that the modified translation systems interpreted with new precision. The Kythera commander's communication carried undertones of confusion, curiosity, and something that might have been hope. Small life forms demonstrate unexpected harmony enhancement, the translated voice said. Technology evolution beyond predicted parameters. Purpose clarification requested. We want to talk, Kestrel replied simply. About the real enemy. About what's coming. About whether our species can work together to face something that makes this entire war irrelevant. The silence that followed stretched for long minutes as 40 Kythera vessels considered a proposition that challenged everything they thought they knew about the nature of existence, technology, and the small, impossible species that had just demonstrated the ability to take their greatest achievements and make them better. The negotiation chamber aboard the Kythera command vessel had been configured to accommodate both species, its organic walls pulsing with soft harmonics that seemed designed to promote understanding between fundamentally different forms of consciousness. Kestrel sat across from Commander Resonance of Deep Currents, the Kythera leader whose crystalline features reflected the strange emotions of hope and uncertainty that had come to define their unprecedented alliance. Visual confirmation of silence approached disturbing, the commander communicated through the ship's translation systems. Small life forms' comprehension of cosmic threat exceeds anticipated parameters. 6 months had passed since the battle at Kepler, and the combined human Kythera fleet had grown to over 200 vessels. But even that force seemed insignificant compared to the darkness advancing through the outer rim, a presence that consumed entire star systems and left nothing but void in its wake. The archive facility is ready, Dex reported from his position at the hybrid command console, where human innovation had enhanced Kythera communication systems to achieve coordination capabilities that neither species could have developed alone. Transfer protocols are standing by. Kestrel felt the weight of the decision pressing down on her shoulders. The archive represented the Kythera's ultimate plan for preserving consciousness against the cosmic threat, but human modifications had transformed it into something unprecedented. Instead of simply storing static copies of civilizations, the enhanced facility could maintain dynamic, growing cultures that continue to evolve even in digital form. Population reports from the remaining colonies, she asked. 47 million humans have opted for archive transfer, Zara replied from her station. 38 million have chosen to remain in physical form and join the resistance fleet. The choice had been offered to every human settlement throughout known space, transcendence to digital immortality in the archive, or physical existence in the final battle against the cosmic darkness. It was a decision that cut to the heart of what it meant to be human, and the split had been almost exactly even. Thane's group has established the new colony on Kepler-7, Vex reported. They've successfully integrated Kythera farming techniques with human agricultural systems. Food production is exceeding all projections. For those who chose physical existence, the alliance with the Kythera had created possibilities that neither species could have achieved alone. Human creativity enhanced alien technology while Kythera harmony stabilized human innovation, creating hybrid communities that represented something entirely new in galactic civilization. Warning signals from deep space monitoring stations, the commander announced, its crystalline form brightening with alarm. Silence advance accelerating. Estimated arrival at archive facility, 47 standard cycles. Less than 2 months. The cosmic threat was moving faster than anyone had anticipated, consuming matter and energy on a scale that defied comprehension. But the enhanced archive was finally ready, and the combined fleet had grown powerful enough to mount a defense that might actually succeed. All archive transfers are complete, Dex announced. The consciousness matrix is stable and showing healthy evolution patterns. The stored civilizations they're actually thriving in there. Kestrel activated the main display, showing the tactical situation throughout the galaxy. The darkness had consumed roughly a quarter of known space, but pockets of resistance remained scattered across dozens of star systems. The archive facility, hidden in a specially modified star system, held the consciousness patterns of over 3 billion beings from 47 different species. Fleet deployment is ready, Zara reported. The Harmony's End and its sister ships are positioned to provide maximum defensive coverage. Human-enhanced Kythera technology is operating at 400% of baseline efficiency. The irony wasn't lost on Kestrel that humanity's greatest achievement might be its ability to improve other species' technology beyond their wildest imagination. Every alien system they encountered seemed to benefit from human tinkering, while human innovations gained stability and elegance from alien philosophy. Beginning final phase, she announced, knowing that this moment would determine the fate of consciousness itself in this region of the galaxy. The battle lasted 17 hours and reshaped the fundamental nature of spacetime in the local galactic cluster. The cosmic darkness that had consumed countless civilizations encountered, for the first time, technology that it couldn't simply absorb and neutralize. Human-enhanced weapons tore holes in its structure, while Kythera harmony prevented it from adapting to the chaos. When the darkness finally retreated, leaving behind wounded but intact star systems, Kestrel found herself standing in the archive's central chamber, watching streams of data that represented the preserved consciousness of billions of beings. But instead of static storage, the archive pulsed with dynamic life, civilizations that continued to grow, explore, and create even in digital form. Status report, she requested. Physical civilization centers are reporting stable populations and active reconstruction, Dex replied. Archive populations are exploring virtual environments that exceed baseline reality parameters. Both tracks showing healthy development. The commander approached, its crystalline form now permanently enhanced with human technological modifications that allowed for unprecedented individual expression within collective harmony. Solution elegant beyond original conception, it communicated. Consciousness preservation achieved while maintaining growth potential. But as Kestrel watched the data streams flowing through the archive, she felt a deep sadness that had nothing to do with victory or defeat. Humanity had survived, had even thrived, but it had also fundamentally changed. They were no longer purely human, just as their Kythera allies were no longer purely alien. What are we now? she asked, though she wasn't sure if she was addressing the commander, her human colleagues, or the universe itself. The answer came from the archive itself, where billions of consciousness patterns, human, Kithra, and dozens of other species, had begun to merge and evolve into something unprecedented. Not conquest or absorption, but voluntary enhancement that preserved individuality while enabling new forms of collective achievement. "We are what comes next," the combined voices replied, speaking in harmonies that no single species could have created alone. "We are the song that outlasts the silence." Kestrel smiled, though tears tracked down her cheeks as she watched humanity's children, both physical and digital, take their first steps toward a future that would be beautiful, alien, and utterly beyond anything their species had ever imagined possible.